Recording live from Glory Hole Studios in Chicago and beyond. This is Cognitive Dissonance. Every episode we blast anyone who gets in our way. We bring critical thinking, skepticism, and irreverence to any topic that makes the news, makes it big, or makes us mad. It's skeptical, it's political, and there is no welcome mat. This is episode 637. And Cecil, we are joined by an incredibly special guest. Yeah. We are joined by the ghost of John McAfee, live, guys, from hell or the depths of a Spanish prison.
Amazing.
Outstanding. Who would have thought we would get such a guest? Think of the barriers we're breaking right now with this episode.
Exactly.
Cecil.
Exactly.
We're going to have to rewrite the Skeptic's Creed. It's a whole fucking thing. All right, it's actually David McAfee.
Yeah.
David, thank you for not being a dead creep in a bottom of a Spanish prison. We really appreciate that the most about you. Also, thank you for coming on our show.
Thank you guys for having me, and no promises on whether or not I'm a dead creep, but I'm not John McAfee.
David, if people, so you're an author. We're going to talk about your books, but you have an interesting background and a backstory. So we'd like to just start with, who are you, David? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. I'm a lot of things. No, I'm a religious studies graduate. And the unique thing about me being a religious studies graduate is that I grew up in a family of religious people, and that I myself am an atheist. And I was raised in a conservative Christian household with my grandparents being biblical fundamentalists who they literally believe every single word of the Bible, including
because
my
it's
grandma.
true. Yeah, because of the inherent truthiness of it. Yeah, right.
The truthiness.
Yeah.
I even asked my grandma, like, you believe that that women should be subservient then? And she's like, if it's in the Bible, I believe it. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't really get through to you then.
Okay, but hold on. With that one, can't you as the man then challenge her on that subject? Then she has to acquiesce, and she's fucked. She's fucked right then. Like, what are you going to do? She's in a bind. How is she going to get out of that one?
The problem was,
boom, mic
I was
drop.
a little boy at the time, and her husband commanded that she did believe in that.
Oh.
They were both biblical fundamentalists, and it wasn't until I was about 13 that I realized how seriously people took religion. I really thought of it as more as like a daycare type of situation where I went and got candy and sang songs and learned pretty stories. And when my grandparents threatened me with hell for not going to church one time, that's when it kind of took me in the other direction, and I started going to church more often. Like, you guys really believe all of this? And I went to various other religions and ended up majoring in it in college.
So you mentioned your grandparents were biblical fundamentalists. Were your parents biblical fundamentalists as well as your grandparents?
I like to say that my parents were more religious about their drug use. They weren't really, they were Christians. If you pressed them on the subject, they would say that they were Christians. But in reality, they were more focused on doing meth together and all kinds of stuff. And I was largely left to my grandparents to be.
So you were raised by your grandparents. Okay.
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Lesser of two evils in this case, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then my dad would go on to become a Mormon, and then subsequently leave the Mormon faith. And my mom was previously a Jehovah's Witness, and now she is an atheist humanist. I also have a former flat earther in my family, so it's Thanksgivings are fun.
Wait a minute. I wrote down questions about what you had said before, and I care about those, but I have to right now. A former flat earther. So now they're a round earther or a sphere earther, an obloid. Yeah, right. So they've come back around, so to speak. Come on, that was good. Back around. That's the only reason I want to even pause and make that joke.
Will you allow latitude to make that joke?
I like it. Yeah, no. She was getting influenced by an ex of hers who was a flat earther, and she took on those beliefs. And when they broke up, she called me and she was like, I don't believe that anymore. I was being stupid. And I was like, all right, cool.
Wow.
Hey, if only, you know what? If only more people could do something like that, right? There's flat earth conventions. If only a few of them would walk away and say, nah, I don't know what the fuck I was thinking.
Right.
I don't know.
If people could just be like, look, I was only in it for the good dick, you know? Like, that's it. As soon as that's gone, I'm out of this thing. I'm out. As soon as you're out, I'm out. All right. So you became a religious studies major. Is that, did you become a religious studies major while you were still at least nominally religious? Or did you become a religious studies major because, tell me about that. Tell me about what drove you to become a religious studies major. I'm curious.
Yeah. I was definitely an atheist at the time, but I wasn't a member. You know, I had never heard of Richard Dawkins. I didn't actively consider myself an atheist or talk about that. I was more just fascinated with that aspect of religion where people take it so seriously that they will bet their entire lives on it and harm those that they love because of it. And then someone across the street has a different religion where they do the exact same thing and believe it just as fervently. And I wanted to study it to learn more about that aspect of it. And so I was fascinated more than anything. And then as I learned more and more about religion, the more and more the more identified as an atheist and started writing about these subjects and started publishing in American Atheist magazine and stuff like that.
Okay, so you were driven to it in part by the sociology or anthropological aspect of religion. And like, I get that. I understand that because it's
exactly. I've said that before, literally, that I consider myself an anthropologist when it comes to religion. And between the ages of 13 and 18, before I went to college and after this realization with my grandparents, I went to churches 4 or 5 times a week. I would be there every single night that I could. And I would sit there with a notepad, just studying these people and watching them speak in tongues and watching them like pretend to heal each other. That shit is so weird. It was blowing my mind. And so, they would ask me questions and I'm like, oh no, I'm good. I'm just here taking notes.
I'm just writing down the weird shit you're doing. No, keep on with that babble talk.
You sure you don't want to get baptized? We just want to know, just do the notes.
Yeah, okay, no, it's fine. Don't worry. Yeah. I'm just drawing these courtroom sketches of you.
You guys handle the rattlesnake. I'm going to watch from a safe distance.
Wait a minute. I know that you're probably joking, but were they rattlesnake people?
Yeah.
Oh, you knew the rattlesnake people.
My grandparents considered themselves Pentecostal Christians, and they spoke in tongues and they did snake handling at their church.
We've never talked to the snake handlers, Cecil.
No, never.
We've never even talked to somebody tangential to a snake handler. How big is that community? I mean, I imagine it shrinks regularly.
It goes down pretty quick.
I've interviewed a couple of snake handlers, and the interesting part about it for me is that I wanted to become a herpetologist all my life, and I wanted to. And you know what? This is going to sound like I made this up for the show, but yesterday morning I caught a rattlesnake and myself in a butterfly net and relocated it because I live here on a farm in kind of a rural area, and we deal with rattlesnakes regularly. So I'm the one handling these snakes now. My grandma would be so proud.
And obviously you had to feel incredibly confident handling that rattlesnake because its venom, of course, couldn't possibly hurt you.
My faith is the
right.
thing.
Yeah, right.
So
it can pierce your skin. Your skin, yes.
So like a logistical question. A logistical question about the snake thing. Do they fuck with the snakes in some way to make them less venomous, or do they do something to? They like grab just some random old snake. So it's not like the people who do like the cobra thing where they make it so that they can't bite and then they mess with the cobra. It's not like that.
Not like that. The secret is that rattlesnakes, snakes in particular, snakes in general and rattlesnakes in particular aren't super aggressive when it comes to biting people because they're going to be more likely to bite like rats and things that they know that they can eat. And so when they bite, it's an extremely defensive bite. It's like they feel like you're threatening its life or something. And so if you're calm around a rattlesnake, you could probably pick up and handle any general rattlesnake that you see. if you're careful and calm and it's not a feisty one. Not that I would recommend that. In fact, I recommend the opposite. But
you heard it here, guys. David says snuggle a rattlesnake. That is what he said. His words, not mine.
On the air. Well, when I caught this yesterday with the butterfly net, he didn't strike one single time from the time I picked him up with the s'mores cooker for a fireplace and put him in the butterfly net. He didn't strike at all. And then we put him in an ice chest from there, and he didn't strike at all there either. So he didn't feel like his life was endangered at that time.
One more question, though. So, like, in the back room of the church, do they have, like, some anti-venom or something just in case something goes wrong? Or do they just be like, no, we're going to lay on hands and
they call them Bibles, Cecil.
Smack it with a Bible. They actually had a community hospital right next to the church, and I always thought that was something to pop out.
That's Providence right there. No, that's the name of the hospital. It's Providence Hospital.
Yeah. Do they like have a guy? I have so many snake-related questions. I'm sorry, I have at least two more. I'm sorry. This is not what you wanted to talk about. I don't care. So, like, do they have to go out and catch these snakes, or do they have a captive series of snakes they keep for their Sunday snaking? I don't.
In my experience, there's a volunteer, like a person who's just like, oh, I caught a rattlesnake recently. I got him in my yard. Like, okay, let's bring him in.
Oh yeah, special guest, come on down.
Everybody's bringing their bag of snake to church.
Yeah, what happens if you have too many people showing up with snakes? Like, no, Jim, we don't need any more fucking snakes.
It's like,
all right,
it's like somebody brought too much dip. You know what I mean? Like, there's 4 dips. There's like 18 snakes.
Okay,
and like, motherfucker,
look,
man.
next time we're going to assign it. We're good. That's on me.
Tell you what,
look,
I told you bring the rats. We don't have anything to feed them.
I will be impressed when I see like a Burmese python handling.
This is amazing.
Right? Like some 20-foot long, like I read a story like literally the other day, like 2 or 3 days ago, about a woman who got straight up eaten by a Burmese python. That would impress me if you're like,
you could handle that thing?
Right.
Yeah.
That weighs 200 pounds.
Right,
you're like,
oh, you could wrestle one of those things. Grandma's out there wrestling a Burmese python.
You could get eaten by it as long as you come out fine 3 days later and it's still biblical. And they swallow you whole. They're not chewing. So
yeah, right.
You got a chance.
It's really a Jonah and the snake situation. That's what it is.
Real hard. You got to pray real hard the whole time. So, did you want to ask anything else before we jump?
No, that's all. That's all the snake related. I wrote down my 3 snake questions though. I did have 3 snake questions. I think I'm good.
So I want to talk a little bit about your book. This is interesting. The title of your book is "Hi, I'm an Atheist: What It Means and How to Talk About It with Others." Tell us about the concept of the book.
Yeah. So the origin of this book was when I was majoring in religious studies. I graduated. I did very well in my religious studies courses, and I applied to the same school to the graduate program. And before I had even formally applied, I just expressed an interest. I met with the dean of admissions, who instantly Googled my name and saw my first book, Disproving Christianity, pop up on the screen. And she looked at me and she's like, I got to word this carefully, but you won't fit in with our department's milieu because you're an atheist activist with an axe to grind.
And you're like, I should never have gone to Liberty University for this degree. I wonder what Olivet Nazarene is doing.
This is a public school. This is UC Santa Barbara, a school where we're government funded. But that dean of admissions, she did come from a theology program about 6 months before that. And so, I think she didn't really understand the differences between a religious divinity school's theology program and a secular religious studies program. But they issued me an apology and they offered to review my application. I declined. But that was kind of the first experience that set me up to write the book, because I realized that coming out as an atheist or being an open non-believer could affect you in more than just your family life, where your aunt gets mad or your grandma doesn't like to hear what you say at Thanksgiving or whatever. That it could affect your employment and your educational opportunities.
I don't know this for sure, right? Because you can't go back in time and re-adjudicate with different circumstances. But I do wonder heavily if you had instead been a devout Christian who had written a book called 10 Proofs of Jesus, if that would have been, like if you'd written the same book, right? The same book, 10 Proofs, an apologist's guide to proving Jesus rocked.
Why atheists are wrong,
right?
Or whatever,
I would imagine strongly that would have actually worked in your favor for that graduate program.
I can promise you that person would get in, because I mentioned in my meeting with the dean of admissions, I mentioned to her that you accept all kinds of people who have done missions, who have written books about Christianity, who have explicitly, been on the other side of that coin, and it shouldn't have mattered for either of these, myself or that hypothetical person, because I wasn't involving my activism with my education. I wasn't writing all my papers about how Christianity was terrible. I was literally just studying religion and learning about how the different faiths interacted with one another and changed their belief systems over time by influencing via trade routes and other weird ways that they interacted. And that was my focus, and that was my specialty. And so I never did anything involving activism in my school, and that hypothetical person writing about Christianity likely wouldn't either. And so it really shouldn't be relevant. But yeah, it was apparently.
Yeah, but I would just seize on something that's interesting to me, is that if an atheist writes a book or is vocal, has a podcast, for example, that's considered activism. If somebody of faith writes a book or goes on mission or evangelizes, that is not considered activism. That's considered just an expression of faith. And so they're viewed as different. One is viewed as inherently political and as a result, inherently divisive. And the other is viewed as normative and something that we all sort of accept and embrace. And that is one thing that I think makes being atheist more challenging than being, part of that, larger, to your point, larger milieu of the cultural set, right? It's like, it doesn't stand in the way directly of my work, et cetera. No, it doesn't, except that, sometimes it does. Except that, like sometimes you'll have to keep quiet about something that other people don't have to keep quiet about, something that not only do other people not have to keep quiet about, but that works as a point in their favor. We've seen how many times somebody who says, they go in front of a judge, and what's one of the things that people will say? Oh, my client made a mistake, but they're a devout Christian and they're a prayer school leader. They're describing religious activism. If they were to describe atheist activism, that would be seen as morally bankrupt. So, and I know I'm just basically repeating back to you what you said in different terms, but I do think that structure is interesting. So when you wrote your book, I'm an atheist, what that means, what I see is the second part, how to talk about it with others. So tell me a little bit more about that. How and why should we talk about atheism?
All right. So I'll address why first. When I talk about, when I encourage people to talk about atheism, what I'm hoping for is that it becomes more normative, that, you talk about it with your mom, and your mom sees that, okay, this person's an atheist and they haven't changed. My son hasn't changed in all this time of being an atheist. Maybe it's not a big deal if my daughter or my mailman or my cashier, whatever, happens to be an atheist. Whereas right now that is seen as more of like a dirty word, and it's seen as, like you mentioned, it's kind of like a mitigating factor, an aggravating factor instead of a mitigating factor when it comes to court cases and stuff like that. And it really shouldn't be that way. But the more people who talk about it, the more we go to a society where it's seen as just another part of anybody's old beliefs or non-beliefs or whatever. So that's why I think it's important that we do talk about it. And as far as how you go about it, obviously there's a lot of information in the book, but I would distill it down to that we have to account for the fact that, like you mentioned, that it's completely normal to be on the other side of the coin and seen as abnormal to be an atheist. You have to understand that just by saying that you're an atheist, you're basically saying everybody that you know and love, in many cases, is wrong about something that they've believed with all of their hearts for their whole life and that they learned from their family. And so it is an inherently controversial position in a society that's dominated by faith.
Yeah, it reminds me of there's a very recent, and I mean it's been out for a long time, but it's got it's got a little more attention now because of the Roe thing, the Shout Your Abortion hashtag, right? And that reminds me too of the power of the LGBTQ community of coming out, right? You come out and you shout your abortion, and you make known to, I think, very specifically.
Me too. Well. Yeah, Me Too is another example.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Make known to people, you know somebody that is like this. You love somebody that is like this. And that sort of thing for any kind of marginalized group. You know, I think it matters. Can you tell me about, what are your thoughts about this and the workplace?
Oh, yeah. That's a big part of the book, because that's where a lot of people have these types of interactions. And even to this day, a lot of my fan mail, a lot of my messages are about people who are experiencing like inappropriate, like their employer is doing something inappropriate when it comes to religion. And so, you know, I have to forward all those people to Freedom from Religion Foundation, to Americans United for Separation of Church and State, other organizations that can do real work on those issues. But when it comes to just communicating about religion, that's a big issue in the workplace too, because it's seen as okay to talk about, you know, oh, where do you go to church in a lot of areas, or, you know, to otherwise imply or just assume the faith of others. And for an atheist, you have to literally question yourself. Am I going to let them assume that I'm a believer like them, and assume that I have these complex rituals like they do, and assume that I worship this deity that they do? Or am I going to break and make an uncomfortable situation even more uncomfortable by saying, you know, I don't believe in any of that, and essentially telling them that you believe that they're wrong about all of these important things in their life? And it can get real dicey. And so, you know, that's just the information you have to have in your mind going into it. You have to have that context and that awareness of what the dynamics are.
What about, so one of the big things is that atheists have to deal with is dealing with close family. Like you mentioned earlier, like when you're talking to Aunt Millie or whatever at Christmas or Thanksgiving, what kind of advice do you give people to talk to people that are close to them, that knew them when they were growing up, things like that? What kind of advice do you get to them?
I think you got to appeal to what you just mentioned, that they knew them growing up, and say, you know, there's this whole background of relationship that we have where my beliefs were not a part of that. Usually in most cases, it's not. And you say, you know, the fact that I don't believe this now shouldn't get in the way of anything that we had or have in the future. And, you know, unless they're trying to force their beliefs on you or others, it shouldn't. And so that should be a good place to start for forming those connections, reforming those connections. And I recommend the first step in any of those situations is also to find common ground. So basically, like, you know, you believe in God, I don't believe in God, but we both hate the Raiders. So let's go talk about that. Sometimes that's all you need, you know?
It's funny because one of the things you had mentioned before was, you said one of the things you were studying was how different religious sects sort of interact with one another. And I wrote a note that, you know, are atheists maybe like, and I don't think this is like an intentional role, but do we serve a sort of cultural role as uniters of other religions? And in other words, we are the enemy of everyone's enemy. Like if you're Hindu and you're Muslim, you know, the Hindu and Muslim populations historically, particularly in India, are not getting along, to put it very mildly. But I think they hate us more than they hate each other.
For sure. Like,
I wonder if there is a sort of enemy of the enemy, the uniter role that atheism plays culturally.
I can promise you that that does happen, because I've personally experienced it on many occasions where somebody will say, I'm a Christian and I would take a Muslim or a Jew any day over somebody who doesn't believe in God. And I've seen this by somebody who also said that he believes that all Christians will rise up and kill all atheists at some point, and said that right now laws are the only thing getting in Christians' way of killing all atheists. And
that's good. Yikes. Because we're not in great shape as a group, you know? Like, I'm just saying. Yikes.
Well, I'm not quite genocide ready. Like, you have beach body. I don't have genocide ready body yet. So
Oi.
You're just lifting Jim Baker buckets to get in shape. And just, there you go.
Oh, no. Yeah, the only reason I don't kill you. Anytime somebody finishes a sentence with, the only reason I don't kill, it's like, I don't need to listen to the rest. What do you want to kill me for, you fucking psychopath?
What's crazy is that there's many believers out there who the one thing that is tethering them to good behavior is that there's someone watching them that will punish them forever in an afterlife. It's crazy that there's so many of them.
Yeah, I'd pretty much kill you and smash your brains in with a rock. But, you know, I don't want to go to hell for being a bad person. You're like, you're already a bad person because you want to beat my brains in with a rock.
Exactly.
What? You live in the thought crime world, not me. How is this not a thought crime?
It's even funnier because this actually ties into the real nature of religion, the real purpose that religion serves as a kind of tribal bonding exercise, as something that brings in fringe people who would otherwise go afoul of the law. They won't if they think they have this cosmic overseer. And that's the real purpose that religion has served in society. And the reason that it still exists today is because it has helped societies in those ways. And, you know, a lot of people who think that there's zero benefits to religion have never met one of these people that without it would be bashing in their brain.
You know, in The Righteous Mind, Jonathan Haidt points that out. He says, you know, one of the things that religion does that has tremendous social value is it brings these groups together and offers these folks something to tribalize around. And without that tribalization, we don't make anywhere near as much social progress. So the question I was going to ask you after that then is, do we as atheists have something that we can tribalize around other than this non-belief, which is difficult to coalesce around?
Yeah. The non-belief only exists because of the belief. So if your only purpose of existence is to oppose something else, you know, just like atheism is, then it's not going to be a strong background for a
The Republicans do okay with that. I'm just saying, their only existence is oppositional.
Opposition, right? Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah.
And I learned this, you know, when I first was starting off with this atheist stuff, I soon transitioned to writing about skepticism and atheism and secular issues and humanism issues and, you know, anything in general that religion has touched on and impeded, trying to kind of clear that way a little bit. And so I think that's the purpose that we serve at this moment.
Let's talk a little bit about your children's books. Tell us a little bit about that. Like, so you not only write books like this, you also write books for children.
Yes. I have 4 children's books, and the first 3 are about the topic of religion. I basically took what I learned in these college classes and distilled it to what kids can understand and help them see where religions come from, where I say, you know, imagine if you looked out your window one day and you saw everything that you needed to survive, all the food and water that you would ever need to survive is just right there in front of you. Wouldn't it kind of feel like there was this person or something up there looking out for you? And explain that that's how this whole idea of a God began, and goes into allowing them to create their own deities and their own religions with sacred texts and stuff like that. So I'm really passionate about getting people to understand the ins and outs of religion and what it means to society and how to interact with people on that subject.
Do you have any kids?
I do not have kids yet. No.
That's pretty cool that you're writing kids' books, because most people, you know, they wouldn't think to write books to appeal to that generation until they have like a personal experience with that generation.
My illustrator, Chuck Harrison, we are 50-50 on the whole venture of the Belief Book series. And when we came up with the idea together, he had a 6-year-old son. And that's where we based this whole thing, was 6 and up as the age range for these books, because we tested them on his son. And we took the questions that he had and we incorporated them into the future editions. And we really worked with his kid. And then later on the second and third book, my niece and nephew as well. And so, you know, I don't have my own kids yet, but I do have a lot of experience in that world that I was able to pull from. And I have 22 farm animals, so that's got to count for at least one kid.
that basically amounts to like 7
You're
kids.
essentially
it's like a 3 to 1
McDonald.
ratio.
I mean, let's be honest. So, do you catch any heat from these books from believers? Do believers think that you're like the root of all evil, and there's going to be a drag queen reading your book at some library somewhere that they have to break up to send the Proud Boys in or something?
Follow up, do your books have a pop-up snake that just jumps out? Because if not, that's a missed opportunity to say. Maybe the next one. No, snake.
It just bites the apple. Like you pull the thing and it bites the apple.
Just there's got
they have a color in your own snake. To answer your question though, literally, I mean, 90% of my emails are hate about those books because people are thinking that I'm trying to literally they say that I'm trying to indoctrinate their kids. I'm like, first of all, I write these books. You have to put it in the kids' hands. And second of all, if anything, it's trying to disindoctrinate there's nothing in there. I literally don't mention the word atheism in these books. It's all about religion, where it comes from, why people believe the things they believe. There's even a section called Higher Power Rangers.
That's pretty great.
Very clever. Love it.
How to nicely interact with religious people, even though they don't believe the same thing. And so it's all respectful and kind. I don't teach anyone to hate anything, but yeah, the hate toward me on this is kind of unprecedented. And those are my most popular books as well. They go around in a lot of homeschooling groups and a lot of secular schooling groups. And it inspired me to come up with a 4th children's book, which has nothing to do with religion, which is called Maggie and Daisy Explore the Farm. And that's about our farm here. And my, I had a St. Bernard, we have a St. Bernard pit bull, and we have a one-eyed Chihuahua, and it's about them. Aww. And it's all about like moral lessons. It's teaching them how to fight bullying and be good people. And so it's that type of thing that without religion, we do need to be teaching kids, like, these are good morals. Let's follow these ones instead of these ones based on this ancient text.
And then you get them in with this book and they think you're just some guy. And then they're like, oh, well, let's see what else he has. Suddenly you're like toppling idols, and it's just chaos in their life. Good for you. I like your plan.
This is all part of the evil McAfee thing. Like, it's soon like there's just a whole bunch of them living in Belize in the jungles with their harem or 14. It's fascinating that your books don't mention atheism, and yet you still have all of this hate mail, because like introspection and self-reflection are intellectual enemies of religious belief. So even though you're not explicitly calling out religion as being like, hey, here's a list of things that aren't true, it's like, hey, here's some things to think deeply about. And they're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
We don't like thinking deeply about that. Yeah. That's not any good.
The books are all focused on questions. Each chapter starts with a question, and the kid is encouraged to just ask more questions and deepen their understanding. It's basically the Socratic method applied to kids, and they hate it. People hate.
Of course they do.
If people were going to find your work somewhere on the internet, where would they look?
I would say Amazon, Facebook, facebook.com/author David G. McAfee. That's where I am most often, but all my books are available on Amazon, but they're available really any bookstore. If you have like a local bookstore you prefer, they'll be able to order it at least.
Well, we'll leave a link on this week's show notes to your Amazon page. And then people can, if they hate Amazon, can certainly Google your books and find them somewhere else. David, thank you so much for joining us and telling us about this stuff. We really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I love the show.
Abortions for all. Yay! No miniature American flags for anyone. Yay!
So, Tom, this last week, we did a fundraiser.
We did.
And we wound up raising with 3 other podcasts, Opening Arguments, Knowledge Fight, and Scathing Atheist, over $160,000.
Huge output.
$160,000 for abortion access. 3 different charities we chose. That whole stream is available on YouTube, and the the place that we wound up donating was awayfund.org. That's the Opening Arguments Fund. It's going to take that money, split it up 3 different ways, and send those checks directly out to those organizations. But huge outpouring from our community as usual.
Man, I first couple of things occur to me. One is I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised because this community has stepped up every time that the call has been made. But even though I'm not surprised, I don't want to take it for granted because I'm also intensely impressed. And honestly, like I don't say this, like I'm actually pretty fucking humbled by it. I really am.
For real.
Because there's no way you and I could do this.
Yeah.
Right? This $160,000 will make a real, genuine, material difference in the lives of people who have now become second-class citizens. And the only way that that happens is because we're all able to connect together.
Yeah.
We're all able to bind together and unite as a community. When we started this, what we had in common was something we didn't believe in. We talked about this with our guest.
Yeah.
And that's nothing, right? That doesn't hold. There's no bond to that. But what I am gratified by time and again is, and I know this might sound kind of cheesy, but I don't care. Like I am genuinely moved by the depths of the bonds that have been created as a result of this little podcast world, this little, I don't know what you call it, but it's like, it's got Knowledge Fight in it now, and it's got us, and it's got the Scathing guys, and it's got the OA guys, and we're not part of anything official. We're not joined at the hip or tethered financially to one another, but there's this thing that we kind of share, and we've been able to sort of connect together and pull some different audiences from this show and from that show. And $160,000 is an impressive showing. It does more than just help the people who get financially involved. That also will get attention, and it will help motivate other people to give. And it will help really establish that this is a community that is powerful, and this is a community that believes in something more than just not believing in things. That's what we're accused of all the time. We're accused of not believing in things. And there's so much more to us than that. I'm so grateful to be a part of that community and that group of people, whatever we call it. I don't know what it would even be called.
Yeah.
But I am deeply grateful to be a part of it.
I am so impressed, like you said, so impressed with the people who step up and help motivate their communities around them, right? Like we don't have a lot of, you and I are just dudes.
Right.
But we just happen to have a little bit louder voice. And the people who listen to us are also caring people.
Right.
And the same thing is true for many in these communities. And so grabbing together all those caring people is sort of really an amazing moment, right? It's what people talk about, like what religion is, you know, the sort of gathering of people and the idea, like there's a very, you know, like there's a very moving experience to be had here just as much as there would be in any spiritual place. You know what I mean? Like these gathering of people to do good work is important. And I want to give a shout out to the Scathing Atheist guys who they were on, like, this is the night before they go to their company retreat. Right. This is the night before they all, and the same thing with Thomas and Andrew, because they were OA. They were going there too. So it's like, this is the night before they all decide to get on a plane and travel somewhere. They took time out of their schedule to do that. The Knowledge Fight guys, they actually, before they came on with us, were doing another fundraiser.
Yeah.
And before that, they had actually raised, I thought I read, $10,000 to $15,000 for abortion before that.
Yeah.
So they had already come in raising extra money before then, trying to spend their time as much as they could to get as much of the word out as they could to sort of further this message to help motivate people to donate. And that you can't, I mean, they're just an amazing group of people, just genuinely amazing.
It truly is. And it's so needed. And here's a story from The Guardian about why this kind of thing is needed. And just to give you guys an idea, the funds that we donated to are funds that help provide not just abortion services themselves, but also logistical access to abortion for those who are living in nightmarish fucking dystopian hellscapes that are essentially Margaret Atwood fucking wet fantasies, right? So that nightmare, these organizations help move women out of Gilead and into the real America where they actually count and have rights.
Yeah.
A story from The Guardian that I can't believe I'm reading in 2022. I can't. 10-year-old rape victim forced to travel from Ohio to Indiana for abortion. I think the most shocking thing about that story is that anybody went to Indiana.
God damn it.
When Indiana is your bastion of progressivism in a region, what have you done,
what I
America?
love about this story, though, too, is that they dig beyond the depths of Indiana and Ohio to reach out to one of the Dakotas to get the governor of one of the Dakotas. I think it's South Dakota. I'm not sure. I don't remember which Dakota it is. I'll be perfectly honest. But the person who they're talking to is this governor who essentially just banned all abortion.
Right.
And they said, well, what would happen, in your state?
Right.
And her response was, nobody's talking about the rapist. And I'm just like, man, the rapist gets to go to jail. Like nobody's talking about the rapist, because the real tragedy here is that the state has abandoned a victim. That's the tragedy. We're not talking about the rapist, because the rapist is going to go to jail, or the rapist is going to be, they're going to have some problem.
Right. Yeah. Like, we're not talking about, like, that's sort of the Texas suggestion that we'll just get rid of rape. Well, why the fuck, if you could do that, why didn't you do that?
Why didn't you do it already?
Really? Yeah. Like, you had a magic no rape wand, and what, you were sitting on it because you could always get an abortion? Like, really? That's why we're not talking about the rapist, because there are already laws outlawing fucking rape.
It's a stupid comment. It's a stupid comment. And the other thing too that is so frustrating with all this is the way this woman frames her argument is as if people are just like using abortion as contraception with no other plan in place. They're just out there having sex, and then they're just like, I gotta go back for an abortion. That is such not what really happens in the world. It is such a fucking fabrication of the right to make it look like every single person who gets an abortion they're just not responsible for their own body. And they go out and flaunt this system to try to show that they're not responsible for their own body. When in fact, especially when you're talking about the pregnancies that go to like the third term, and then there needs to be an abortion because of medical reasons, these people were ready to have a baby.
Man, I just watched, and I recommend anybody, I just watched this week the documentary After Tiller. So Tiller is the name of an abortion provider who performed abortions in the third trimester, and he was assassinated. So After Tiller is an abortion documentary. It was made in 2015. The third trimester abortion providers in America, there are 4. There are 4 people, 4 human beings providing that service. That's it. Just 4 human beings providing that service. Less than 1% of abortions are in the third trimester, and they are almost exclusively people who desperately wanted these children, and they have terrible fetal abnormalities. They were never going to be viable, or the women are in terrible danger if they were to continue that pregnancy, or there was some exigent circumstance which prevented women from gaining access to care in a more timely fashion. Regardless, they are a statistical anomaly. There's 4 providers. The anti-choice movement or right or whatever you want to call it, they seize on this as if it's some kind of a norm, when it's like 91.1% of all abortions occur before 10 weeks.
99 or 91?
91% occur before 10 weeks.
10 weeks.
Before 10 weeks.
That is like what I said. It's a bloody nose.
Right.
It's not even if you were to show someone what was gone at 10 weeks.
Right.
They would be like, what is that? Is that like an apple seed?
And when you push that number out to like 20 weeks, it's like 99%.
Yeah, sure.
So we're not talking about
first trimester abortions. That's what Roe codified, right? Was free for the country, first trimester abortions. And then everybody kept on trying to put in little things like, oh, you gotta name it, and you gotta stick a thing up your hoo-ha, and you gotta look at it into the face and say, I'm gonna kill you, or whatever. Like all these weird laws that they try to put in place. But Roe essentially said 20 weeks is fine.
Yeah, and I looked this up the other day because I was curious about this, and I got to thinking about this. And so it is not until sometime in the 7th month of pregnancy that there is, so we talk about like measuring the right, I don't want to say we, the right talks about measuring things like the heartbeat in order to determine life, right? And we had Dr. Jessica on twice, and the heartbeat, first of all, it's not a heart.
Yeah.
Second of all, it's not a heartbeat, but also that's not actually a good measure of when life begins. And we know that because it's not the measure of how life ends. So in other words, if I get in a car crash or my dad has a fucking stroke or something and his heart keeps beating, what we actually measure to determine life is whether or not there's brainwave activity.
Yeah.
That's how we determine whether or not a fully bodied person who is no longer physically tethered to another human being for life support, that's what we measure. And we measure that if somebody is 70 years old, and we measure that same thing if somebody is 6 months old, right? We don't measure a different thing if there's any question about whether somebody's alive. It's not until the 7th month that there's any measurable brainwave activity. Prior to month 7, there is no, this is according to the NIH. So just in case anyone's wondering where my source is, from the NIH. So there's no measurable brainwave activity. So the thing that we use to measure whether or not a fully bodied person is alive or dead, and we measure that to decide, can we harvest organs from this thing?
Yeah.
Right?
Terry Schiavo.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so like if I get in a fucking car wreck and my brain dies and my heart keeps beating, they can stop my beating heart, right, in order to take my kidneys and give them to someone that needs them because I'm fucking dead. And dead is the opposite fucking thing of alive. We're liars about this. Like the right is lying about this. They are lying. They're moving the goalpost with the heartbeat when we don't use that goalpost for any fully bodied, non-tethered human organism.
Sure.
And it's fucking nonsense. This story from The Guardian, a 10-year-old kid, and in the state of Ohio is like, no.
And
the Dakotas are like, no.
And they're going to have a special session in Indiana soon to abolish it. And they will.
They will.
They will 100%.
Absolutely.
In a special session soon that's like, yeah, no, it's going to be gone. So that's a 2-state area. Think about where you're at. Let's say you're in like the Toledo area or maybe a little bit farther. Let's say you're closer to Cleveland. What do you have? Hours and hours and hours and hours to drive to get somewhere so that because Michigan now is going to go dark.
Right.
Right.
If you're in Cincinnati, you're 5 hours from civilization.
Yeah. Cincinnati, you're fucked. Because Kentucky, Tennessee.
Right.
You know, what's around you?
Right. Seriously, you're 5 hours to Illinois.
What's around you?
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Is like, and this is a long place. You're traveling a long way.
Yeah. And the costs of that travel, it's also, I looked up, the majority of people who choose to have an abortion already have kids. They already have kids. They understand what's going on. Like the right likes to paint this, like to your point, they like to paint this as a matter of responsibility. It's a bullshit way to phrase something, right? This has nothing to do with responsibility. This has everything to do with denying women bodily autonomy, because to deny a woman bodily autonomy is to relegate women to second-class citizenry. And that's not unintentional. There was a Times article that came out today that was talking about how women are not able to return to the workforce in the same numbers as men have been able to return to the workforce post-pandemic because the industries that have not come back online are the childcare and elder care industries. Right. Industries which are both staffed by primarily women and also primarily services that women need. This, in conjunction with the destruction of women's bodily autonomy rights, means that women will be forced more and more into roles of financial servitude.
Even further out of the workforce.
Yep.
And the worst part about all this is that women were making true strides, becoming the more educated group of people.
Yeah.
Be getting more and more better paying jobs,
voting more often.
Yep. There was so much more that had happened in recent years. There was progress.
The huge progress.
And that tells you, I think, why these things are being decided the way they are.
Absolutely, man.
Absolutely. Really devastating story about this poor little girl.
This little kid, man. 10 is so little.
10 is so young. 10 is so young. And to be in that situation and to look at any of these anti-choicers in the country and to have them sit down with her and say, no, you're forced to do this. You have to, because this woman and this governor is like, every life is beautiful. And at one point, I want to read part of what she says.
Oh my God, it's so monstrous. Yeah.
She says, asked if the girl should have to leave have the baby. Noam responded that every single life is precious. This tragedy is horrific, But in South Dakota, it was a South Dakota lady, the law today is that abortions are illegal except to save the life of the mother. And I would argue to you, Tom, that if this little girl had an abortion, it would save her life.
Yeah, because
it would save her life. It would save her whole life.
It would save everything that's meaningful about being alive.
And I would say the same thing about every single mother out there that has an abortion, that it saved their life.
Absolutely.
That while it might not have been a life-threatening injury, it saved their life.
Yeah, your life is more than just whether or not you live or die. Your life is a series of ideas and dreams and stories about who you want to be,
exactly
and a narrative you want to tell about your fucking future. And an unplanned pregnancy and an unwanted pregnancy necessarily derails that and threatens and destroys that story that you're trying to tell yourself and work toward about your own life. And it is nobody's fucking business but that woman who is pregnant about what story she chooses to tell about her relationship to motherhood, whether she chooses to engage that or chooses not to engage that. This follow-up bullshit that she said yes, because asked if allowing an abortion to be performed on a 10-year-old would be considered as protecting the life of the mother, Noam did not rule out that interpretation. But then she says this, and you guys need to hear this. Yes, that situation, the doctor, the family, the individual closest to that will make the decisions there for that family. No, they won't because they can't.
Stepped in. Because the state now is the wall in between all those things.
Right.
The church, the mother, the father, the
financial
situation, the family around it, the doctor, all that stuff gets bodied out of there.
Right.
By the state, who's now gets to make this decision unilaterally for everyone.
I read that line and I couldn't believe that line, because that line basically says it's nobody's business but the woman and her care providers and those closest to her, right?
And a bunch of senators.
And I'm just
and 9 justices.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I fucking agree. So why are you in her fucking uterus, man?
Fucking A, man.
This is a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
What the fuck? That was such an egregious line. I couldn't believe that when I read it.
People always say shit like, I'm gonna pray for you. You gonna pray for me, so you gonna sit in your apartment and do nothing? 'Cause that's what your prayers are. You sitting around and not taking action as I struggle with the situation. Don't pray for me, make me a sandwich or something. Because I'm really upset and I can't cook for myself.
This story comes from Rolling Stone and is not surprising. SCOTUS justices prayed with her, then cited her bosses to end Roe. So this is specifically citing a right-wing evangelist who met with and bragged about and laughed about the justices that she didn't meet with, to pray ahead of time with these fucking justices, and then was like, they didn't all want to meet with me. They didn't all want to pray with me, but some of them sure did. And then wouldn't you know it, our right-wing fucking religious fundamentalist ideas made their way into the law of the land.
And not only that, this woman represents one of the people who brought a case. So it's not just that this is just some random preacher, right?
Right.
This is a random preacher with a giant organization behind her that is bringing lawsuits all the way up to the Supreme Court and offering opinions to the Supreme Court that they are then citing in their rulings.
Yeah.
This is a dangerous overstepping of bounds and a huge conflict of interest. And it's crazy that there are no safeguards.
Yep, man. Yep. There's no bumpers playing fucking bowling with the fucking Supreme Court. There's no bumpers. It's it.
The rails are off.
It's completely like, all right, we did this thing, and it seems like it just seems like unethical on its face to share time and to, outside of the courtroom, share this sort of like side prayer religiosity moment with members of the fucking case you're about to hear. But if it happens and we find out, there's literally nothing anyone can do. There's literally nothing anyone can do. If you have any illusions whatsoever that this is not the rise of the theocrats,
right?
That the theocrats are not establishing through their most recent ruling a very specific and narrow interpretation of Christianity that everybody else will be forced by law to follow. If you are somehow confused about that, allow this to disabuse you of that notion.
Yeah, it is. It is one of those moments where they try to, you see it happening and you're appalled, right?
Right.
But then they try to make it better by saying things like, well, Scalia used to go hunting with Dick Cheney. And you're like, that's not okay either.
Right.
Like it's okay. If you're going to use that as a way to say, well, sometimes Supreme Court justices, they get buddy-buddy with people who might have influence on their decision-making. And you think, fuck you.
Yeah, right.
That shouldn't happen. We hired you for one job, man. You had one job and then you fucking cocked it all up. You went out there and fucking hung out with this guy and hung out with that gal. And you did praying in the fucking steps or in your private chambers with these people who you're reading fucking material from.
Yep.
That is a clear conflict of interest. There should be an ethics committee that fucking fires you for the American people.
Yeah, then there's nothing. There's no safeguard.
Nothing.
You go, first of all, going hunting with Dick Cheney automatically shows that you have little regard for human life.
Absolutely.
Like how in the scars or it didn't happen.
There's a lot of holes in that argument. You know what I mean? A lot of holes.
That is defective on its face.
It'd be awesome if Scalia apologized to him after he gets shot in the face like that one guy.
All I'm saying is if somebody had to get shot in the face, why wasn't it Scalia?
Also, I think Scalia could probably take it in the face. He probably could take it. Like he was like
wouldn't even care.
He was like made of just he was like a human callus that it probably just bounced right off of him. No, but
he is callous. Yeah. That's true. Like it's very obviously callous.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Now he's
dead.
Now he's a corpse. But yeah, man, fucking it's one of those things that you read and it very much reminds me of the last 4 years and how government was run. And you just see that there's these weird backroom deals and I'm not going to like you anymore unless you do this thing for me.
Right.
And all this weird, it just feels so strange. It feels, I feel like I was lied to my whole life. I feel like when I was a kid and I was in those civics classes and they looked at me in the face and they said, adults are in charge. They got this.
Yeah, right.
And I thought, you know what? You're right. Those are adults. Those are people. Some old dude in a wig, like a powdered wig years ago, wrote some shit down, and then they figured it all out. And then a bunch of old dudes in powdered wigs maybe made 10 little alterations to that thing. And then down the road, they certainly changed what they were doing, and they suddenly realized that they were super wrong about black people. They were super wrong about women. They were super wrong about a bunch of other shit, and they changed it all. At first they were wrong about alcohol and then they were wrong about alcohol again. But like they worked their way through it. And then you get to now and you think, yeah, that's got a long tradition. All those people are in charge. This is how this works. This is okay. And then now you're like, nobody's in charge, man. Holy shit. These people are all clowns. They're all fucking clowns, man. Are they all, well, who has the new codes? Get them quick. Hide them under the fucking White House dog. Whatever you got to do. It's fucking terrifying that we live in this world. Like there's a story by Julia Sweeney where she talks about the first time she realized God didn't exist. And she was walking from like her shed to her house and she had to stop and lay on the ground because she wasn't sure how gravity worked anymore. It like threw her for such a loop. And like when they pulled the fucking curtain back from how fucking clown shoes the whole government is. God. I feel the same way. I just want to like hold on to the statue of Lincoln and just hold on. Just like hold on to it, man.
Like a little kid holding your dad's leg.
Don't let go. Be like, no. They lied to me, man. You've been lying to me forever. It's crazy, dude.
It is. It's like, I used to believe in the myth of serious people.
Right? What a great line. The myth is serious. That's the name of this episode. The myth is serious people.
And like, I am so distressed that it's just everyone guarding their lunch table. They're like, we're gonna go to wars and we're gonna have trade deals or not have trade deals or fix the climate or not fix the climate or like have generations that have water or not have. All of this is based on whether or not someone likes someone else. Like that's how you decide who's at your pool party, man.
Jesus, man.
That's how you decide who you stand in the garage and fucking clink beers with. That is not how you decide whether or not you send 10,000 troops into fucking battle because of, but yes, it is. Yes, it fucking is.
Yes, it fucking
because
is.
The myth of serious people is a fucking myth.
Yeah.
We are run entirely by a bunch of like dudes who want to be friends with each other.
Or fucking, they're so clown shoes.
Right.
It's so clown shoes, man. I'm just blown away by how fucking clown shoes it is. And like, the other thing too is this doesn't have anything to do with this story, but you know, this week, Lindsey Graham was subpoenaed. And he was just like, fuck
just
you.
like, no.
He's just like, fuck you.
I'm not going to do it.
Fuck you, because fuck you. That's why, because I'm fucking Lindsey, because I'm Lindsey Graham.
Yeah,
and
man.
you know what I get to say? Fuck you, motherfucker. And guess what? What's going to happen?
Literally nothing.
You know what happens if they can say, hey, what? You know what, Cecil? You've been subpoenaed. What happens if I say, fuck you, Tom?
Yep.
What happens then? Exactly.
U.S. Marshals, motherfucker.
Hey, you know what you got to do? A, go, or B, go to jail. Those are your two fucking options.
Yep.
You know, that's what's so crazy to me is there's a fucking, like I know that I grew up in two Americas. I know there's two Americas. I know there's an America for rich people, and I know there's an America for all the rest of us fucking suckers. And I know that's true, but I didn't think that would be so brazen out in the open.
I know, dude. This is like when I read that Lindsey Graham thing, my first thought was like, are they all sovereign citizens?
Yeah.
Are they all governed by maritime law?
Am I being
what the
detained?
fuck?
Did he ask if he was being detained right now?
We could just say like, your laws don't apply to me. I'm a citizen.
I want to see that guy
count.
I want that guy from that courtroom who stopped that guy to come in. I want him to tase Lindsey Graham and drag him by the fucking barbs to his fucking seat at the, like, fuck you, man. Every other fucking Joe in the fucking country's got to show up to these things. You're the only asshole who gets to say no? How about fuck you? How about that?
I don't recognize the authority of this committee. I don't recognize the authority of the IRS. I still got to pay my fucking taxes.
No kidding, man.
I don't get to play sovereign citizen because that's insane.
Yeah, I don't
but
get
you
to
do
decide.
if you're a senator?
Yeah, fuck you, man. Fuck you in the ass.
It's
you get to
so
go.
crazy.
You get to go or you get to go to jail. And I'll tell you what, man, that's such bullshit. It's such bullshit that they let these people get out with this. And I thought for sure there was rules.
I did too. What I don't understand is how you can, I understand that you can show up and just plead the fifth the whole time.
Yeah.
But to just like take your fucking dick out and fucking whack it at everybody, you're just like, whack my dick at you.
I'm outside. I'm fucking Lincoln's face out here. Are you kidding me?
That's the part I don't understand.
And the worst part is I'm still holding on and he's fucking in the face. I got my arms around him.
You're making it weird. You're making it weird.
Fucking his face. I can't hug him around the neck. I gotta hug him around the ankle.
It's dripping down.
Jesus Christ, Lindsay.
I forgot the dog. There's a dog, too.
And the dog, oh!
Then the dog fucks the girl.
That's called bestiality.
Yes.
It's in the Bible.
It's in my diary.
He said it's in his diary. And I knew his dog.
Here's civics class, Tom. Here you go.
This could you again, shit I can't believe I'm reading in 2022. Washington Post, in trainings, Florida tells teachers that religion belongs in public life. And let me read specifically. Included in the training is the statement that it is a misconception that the founders desired strict separation of church and state. Other materials included fragments of statements that were cherry-picked to present a conservative view of American history. This is my takeaway from the training is that civics education in the state of Florida right now is geared toward pushing particular points of view, says Broward County teacher Richard Judd. The thesis they ran with is there is no real separation of church and state. DeSantis is basically creating an entire, he's pushing as far as this can be pushed. There is also a law, I don't know if I threw it in the notes or not, but there's a law that was recently passed in Florida that university attendees in Florida, attendees and employees of the university have to declare their politics before attending university in order to make sure that the university represents a diversity of viewpoints.
God.
So you have to declare your fucking political views as a fucking 18-year-old kid applying to some university of Gatortown or whatever the fuck in Florida. So you can get a substandard education. I don't even know if Florida schools are any good. I have no idea.
They have good sports teams. Here's the thing. This is coercing people to do this, right? So like, here's what they have. They have this plan where they're going to get some guy, some fucking joker who believes that fucking, God fucked the Constitution and had America as a baby or whatever.
That's what they do believe.
And so that's some yokel's going to put that shit in a PowerPoint and he's going to stand in front of everybody. And they have this guy who's like a Stop the Steal guy who's giving fucking lectures on this stuff. And they're attending these lectures and they're being coerced to attend these lectures because it's $700 to attend for them to get $700.
Right.
They don't have to pay $700. They get $700 to attend. And then it's $3,000 if they certify. So if they say, yeah, fucking Jesus fucked the Constitution, and that's how America
you get
came.
a check,
and then they had a bald eagle, and that was they called it America. And then you get a $3,000 check.
Yep.
And then they get to go back. Now, don't get me wrong. You know, a teacher can probably make their own decision on whether or not they're going to choose to teach this stuff. But they're basically indoctrinating teachers. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to indoctrinate teachers, and they're also. I mean, let's be real honest. We've all been in jobs where people have coerced you to do something. And if you go somewhere and let's say I totally don't believe this stuff, but I go back, I took this thing because I wanted the $3,000 because I don't give a shit. I can fucking zone out just like the best of them, right? I can fucking zone out all day. I'd be like, I could pretend to look at you for a long time. And so they just stand up there and he does his like song and dance. And I
637 episodes.
And I get my $3,000.
Yeah.
And I walk home. And then I go back and there was 3 or 4 of these other teachers that were there. And then suddenly I'm not teaching this stuff.
Yep. Yeah, man. This is an intent to create a workplace culture.
Yes.
To single out anybody who doesn't share the same political ideology. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's an incentives program to create a right-wing educational culture. And how insane is it that the right has been screaming about indoctrination through the schools for this long? And now they're just like, you know what?
We need to
formalize it.
Yeah, well, exactly.
And you're like, okay, look, I will grant that education has always had a liberal bias. I would argue that education has had a liberal bias because the more educated you are, typically the more liberal you become, right? And that's because you learn more and it humanizes you and you just have a better understanding of the world than if you don't do that, right? But now what they are doing is literally systematizing and formalizing a right-wing indoctrination process, and then they are providing financial incentives and disincentives to not be engaged or be engaged with that formalized indoctrination. And you're like, holy fuck, that's draconian. Holy shit, that's top-down. Wow, is that big government? And they're just like, yeah, we know. Anyway, Florida.
Anyway.
Look, hey guys, you don't have to wear a mask though.
Yeah.
Welcome to Florida. You get the spicy cough as much as you want. Enjoy.
It's so funny that you say that because it's so true. They've known forever that you indoctrinate children. They do it in church. Right. They do it when they're very young. They've known this forever. And they've been doing it through the textbooks for decades.
Oh my God.
Right?
Yeah. Yep.
I was talking to a teacher the other night, and his comment was all the textbooks. The two states that get to decide what's in the textbooks are California and Texas. Those are your 2 states. So when you're a buyer of those textbooks, you get to choose
California
or Texas textbooks. Those are what you get to choose.
Sure.
And so half the country is reading a Texas textbook, and half the country is reading a California textbook because those are your 2 biggest buyers. And so they're not going to make. They're not going to make them. They're not making an Illinois textbook.
Right. Yeah. They're not making a fucking Maryland textbook.
They're certainly not making a Carolina, either one.
Right.
You know. So you basically you're stuck with the ideology, the ruling ideology of those 2 places. And here's my thing. Texas go blue.
Yeah.
Recently, because of Roe v. Wade, there was a huge surge in people registering to vote. Huge surge in it.
Yeah.
Saw it. There's like all over the country too.
Yeah.
And there was a huge surge. I think this could be the one thing that changes so many people's minds about how they vote, about what they do. You know, it's a really difficult thing to watch, not just, you know, that play out, but then this indoctrination, wanting to change history. These courses are so just egregious, trying to change everything about history, trying to, you know, there's a law down there where you can't even mention certain things because it hurts people's feelings and whatever. Yep. And genuinely, that's what they're trying to do in these textbooks, and that's what they're trying to do in these conferences when they get people together. They say they're trying to teach both sides. But again, it's that both sides bullshit. We're like, okay, both sides means one is false.
Right, yeah. There's no both sides of science, right?
Yeah.
Science settles on things once the experimentation and evidence has been concluded, right? Or like it's the preponderance of evidence has shown that it is deeply likely that gravity works approximately like this. Not however else you fucking think because you made it up.
Right.
Like that's not how, but there's a, you know, like, and Fox News just right in the title, I don't know if they still use it, but they used to say that fair and balanced. And it's like, wait a minute, like some things there are not two legitimate sides to.
Right.
You know, whether or not the framers of the Constitution, and you and I do not give a flying fuck
about them.
About whether or not the framers of the Constitution wanted this or fucking that. Fuck that. That's a stupid fucking argument about how we decide to live our lives in the 21st fucking century, right? But even if you go back to that, they go pixie choosy, right? It's like, you know, like we're pretty much not going to pay attention to Jefferson particularly because that's problematic, and we're not going to pay attention to these explanatory letters to the fucking Danbury bishops or whatever the fuck it is, where the separation of church and state is literally explicitly outlined. And we're not going to pay attention to this other text, which is, you know, explanatory to the intent of the framers, where they literally explain what they fucking intended.
Right.
Like, it's all bullshit. Like, it's all bullshit. It's not a both sides thing. It's like trying to like, well, you know, we got to look at evolution and creationism. Like, well, no, you don't.
No, you don't.
No, you literally
No, you
don't.
don't.
You can do the creation thing in your mythologies class.
Yeah.
You can do it in your religions class. You can do it at home. You can do it, but you can't do it in a science class. There's no fucking science around it.
Exactly.
It is a false dichotomy.
And it's the same thing with history too.
Yeah, man.
If you want to take slavery out of here, you're like, well, then you're whitewashing history so white people in the class feel better.
Yep.
And you're like, fuck you. That doesn't belong in here, man.
Like let's explain the entire history leading up to the Civil War, then the Civil War itself, then the Reconstruction era, then the Jim Crow era, then the Civil Rights movement, and let's explain all of that without ever delving into fucking race relations.
Yeah.
None of it would make any sense. What are you talking about?
Though, when you went to school, you didn't. I know I didn't hear about it as a slavery issue when I was a kid. It was a little tiny bit, but it was not as much as it wasn't. They talked about it as a states' rights issue when I was a kid.
No, that was different. So we did the Civil War in 7th grade. And we watched the Ken Burns documentary, The Civil War, together.
Good.
And we watched Glory, the movie. And so it was very heavily oriented. But I think that's just luck of the draw as to who you get as a teacher.
Yeah.
Right? And that's bullshit, because history is a series of like narrative truths that we unearth from like materials, like first order materials, like original text writings, etc. It is not a discretionary narrative as determined by the people who want to push forward an ideology.
Right.
Again, you can't, like, states' rights, it's like, states' rights to do what?
Yeah.
Like,
nobody
it doesn't make any sense.
Nobody ever finishes that sentence.
It's like, well, Jefferson Davis, well, what did Jefferson Davis was the president of the Confederacy, who in his own words said, we're doing this to keep slavery.
Yeah.
That's the guy who was the president of the fucking Confederacy. And he's like, this is about slavery.
I'm literally writing it down right now. Yeah.
Like I'm not making that up. Like he literally was like, guys, this is about slavery. Like let's not, just so that nobody in history ever gets confused. And then they're just like, well, it's really about statues. It's about statues.
Hugging Confederate statues.
It's about being proud of the South. Yeah. It's about being proud of the South.
It's Southern pride, really.
That's what it is. It's
liking orange and blue.
Yeah, I like stars arranged in a cross-like pattern.
And racism. I like racism.
Are my bed sheets clean, honey?
I just want to say though, I don't know what DeSantis. I don't know how deep his hooks are in that state. I don't know what his future looks like. But man, he's one of those people I'm rooting against.
Oh my God.
100% want it. I can't wait till he loses. They're talking about him maybe running for president.
I know. He's scary as fuck.
He's a scary president. He'd be a scary president.
I have my barber, and I love my barber's a great guy. I've talked about him on the show before. I actually love my barber. He's a great guy. There is a barber that is in the other chair. And I was waiting for my guy. I was a little early the other day. I was waiting for my guy. And so I'm bullshitting with her as she's waiting for her client. And she's talking about like, I'm moving to Florida, this or that. We're talking about the weather, some innocuous bullshit. She brings up that she's going to move to Florida. And I was like, oh, why are you moving to Florida? Oh, my husband is a cop and, he wants to move to Florida. He wants to get out of here because it's a red state. And I just was like, well, good riddance to you both. I was just like, I can't even hold it back. Like, I was just like, good riddance to you both. And it killed the conversation like that. I was just like, fucking move. Take your fucking cop husband and fucking move to Florida so that you can live in a fucking red state. Fucking bury all you stupid assholes in the garbage, sweltering, dirty wang of this country. Who cares? But DeSantis scares me.
Yeah.
Like, he scares me because he's like fucking weirdly popular among a group of people whose minds I literally cannot understand.
I can't parse it.
I can't.
I can't. So that's going to wrap it up for this week. I want to thank David McAfee for coming on. We're going to put a link in the description for this video down there. The link will lead you to Amazon, his books, but then also to his Twitter account and his Facebook. So check him out and check out his books. He's got a ton of books, both children's and adult books. So take a look. That is going to wrap it up for this week, though. We are going to leave you like we always do with the Skeptic's Creed.
Credulity is not a virtue. It's fortune cookie cutter, mommy issue, hypno-Babylon bullshit. Couched in scientician, double bubble, toil and trouble, pseudo quasi-alternative, acupunctuating, pressurized, stereogram, pyramidal, free energy healing, watered downward spiral, brain deadpan sales pitch, late night info docutainment. Leo, Pisces, cancer cures, detox, reflex, foot massage, death and towers, tarot cards, psychic healing, crystal balls, Bigfoot, Yeti, aliens, churches, mosques and synagogues, temples, dragons, giant worms, Atlantis, dolphins, truthers, birthers, witches, wizards, vaccine nuts, shaman healers, evangelists, conspiracy, doublespeak, stigmata, nonsense. Expose your sides. Thrust your hands, bloody, evidential, conclusive. Doubt even this.
The opinions and information provided on this podcast are intended for entertainment purposes only. All opinions are solely that of Glory Hole Studios, LLC. Cognitive Dissonance makes no representations as to accuracy, completeness, currentness, suitability, or validity of any information and will not be liable for any errors, damages, or butthurt arising from consumption. All information is provided on an as-is basis. No refunds. Produced in association with the local Dairy Council and viewers like you.